In today's show, very special guest joined by Tara and Rose from the We Have a Take podcast. We get into all things Blazers. Welcome to Locked On Blazers. Let's get into it.
You are Locked On Trailblazers, your daily Portland Trailblazers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
What's up, world? It's your past first point guard and Trailblazers reporter, Mike Richman. You're listening to another episode of Locked On Blazers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Available wherever you get podcasts and also on YouTube. Thanks for making this show your first listen. Coming at you each and every weekday, Monday through Friday. So make it a part of your daily routine. Make your first listen. Tell your friends to do the same. It's a very special one for our first episode of 2025. Happy New Year. You made it. And I am joined here today by the hosts of the We Have a Take podcast, the What podcast. You know them. You love them. Tara and Rose. Tara, how you doing? Rose, how you doing? Welcome.
Thank you for having us. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year. We made it. I really loved what Dick Clark and Ryan Seacrest did when the ball dropped. Just kidding. We're hours before midnight. We record these early. Rose, your first time guest of the show. I'm so happy to have you. How you doing?
Great. Thank you for having us. I'll say this. When you said Dick Clark, I thought I was in a time machine because isn't he like no longer
dead for a decade? Yeah, but that's who I don't watch the ball. It's got to still be Dick Clark and Ryan Seacrest. And like Jelly Roll and Post Malone, those are famous people. I guarantee that's who does the countdown. You know, it's like hours beforehand. I haven't turned my television on, but
and Anderson Cooper.
Oh, Anderson Cooper does do it. That's true. Really stretching his skills. So we're here to talk about the Blazers' big picture stuff. I want to start here because I think for the most part, you two are pretty positive. So what I appreciate about your program is that you find, even when you're frustrated with the nonsense of the Trailblazers, you find ways to enjoy the nonsense. I'm wondering in this season, what makes you hopeful? Like when you're watching this team, what makes you hopeful about whatever's on the other side of the hill?
Oh, God,
Rose, we can start with you.
Question. Well, so I try to remember how much I invest to, I'll say, like the players that we have on our team. So sometimes guys don't work out in Portland, and that happens a lot. You know, we have to say goodbye to players that we love, but I always try to be like really positive about like maybe how they've seen them grow here, or the ways in which they've contributed to our community here, or like maybe they're going to a team that I know is like really gonna love them. Like one of the things that I held on to when we traded Josh Hart, which was really, really sad for me, was that like
he's balling with the Knicks. He's so good.
He's so good. But as soon as he was traded, there was that video that circulated online of Jalen Brunson being so excited to see that trade come through. And so like, even though I was really sad as a fan and I had to say goodbye to this player that I loved so much, I was like, good things are coming from you. And like, lo and behold, like, look at the Knicks now. Like, is there a better place for him?
Exactly. And I think his wife's happier. I don't think she was super interested in living in Portland, Oregon. So good for her.
Yeah. No judgment there at all whatsoever.
Tara, what about you? What are you hopeful for? Like, are there basketball things when you're say you're watching them kind of get thrashed, like they did on portions of Monday nights? What are you hopeful for watching a game like that?
More dunks. The Blazers are dunking more. It's been so long, and that's something that I've always loved. And something that I've always loved. I love dunks. I love passing, and I love watching young players play. So I was, in a desert basically when it was the Terry Stotts team. So at least we've got that. And like every year I always joke, oh, the summer they better start like throwing lobs. And now I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm almost like, did you really want to throw that as a lob? Maybe you could have done something a little bit different. So my heart grows every time I see dunks on purpose, not like as, oh no, there's nothing else we can possibly do. I guess someone's going to have to dunk it. I love like the intentional two-handed, mind you. And even lately we're getting backwards dunks. So, those keep me going.
Yeah, I think Denny Avdia alone has added to the quota of both, because he's just a fast break machine. Like he just grabs the ball and he's gone. Truly turbo, a nickname that he earned because the man smashes the turbo button, but also is, we'll call it enthusiastic with the lob passes. My man is trying them. He threw one to DeAndre Ayton last week from like a step inside half court that crammed off the backboard. And it was like, hey, I know why you did it, but that is a 17-foot lob, and the rim is at about 10. You're a little high on that one.
Can I just say that I was so excited when we got Denny Avdia because I watched a lot of the Wizards last year, and I was like, we may not be good, but we will be fun.
What weird hell led you to watching a lot of the Wizards last year?
Well, it's this weird hell called fantasy basketball.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
Where I happen to have a lot of Wizards on my team. But also because as Tara knows, I watch a lot of other bad teams when our team is bad because I like to have like kind of some awareness for how bad we are compared to the other teams at the bottom. And so I watched the Wizards and looked to see how bad we were by comparison. And so, we were in the same ballpark last year.
Relatively similar. Yeah. Relatively similar. Ant was better than Jordan Poole. Jeremy was maybe a little better than Kyle Kuzma for most of the season, but then okay. I wonder, like, for, you say like trying to appreciate Rose, the guys that come here. So when new players come, so when Denny shows up and when Donovan Clingan shows up, are you immediately trying to find reasons to love them? Are you like chasing? You're like, okay, how am I going to become a super fan, of the new guy in town?
Kind of. So sometimes it depends on the player. So sometimes it's a player I know a lot about. Sometimes it's a player I know nothing about. The guys I know nothing about are easy because then I get to start to learn about them and read about them and find out if there's things that I didn't know about them that I can easily love about them. And the other guys, it's like, maybe I didn't like them so well where they were before. And I was like, oh, this is going to be a chore, isn't it? But I'll say, like, for a guy like Denny Avdia, when he got traded here, I was like, oh, I'm so excited. And he was not like a player that I looked at and was like, I knew what his contract looked like. I know everybody talked about, his contract is so
we
team
love that,
friendly,
right?
or whatever.
I
didn't know about
that. Just a percentage of the cap that we appreciate the efficiency of. But yeah,
I didn't know that, but I knew that if I could pick anybody off that team to be on my team that would be fun to watch, I would probably pick him. Like, a lot of people probably would have picked Kyle Kuzma because they know exactly what Kyle Kuzma is and he's good at shooting 3-pointers and whatever. But like, I wanted that guy who played like a wild stallion, kind of out of control, because someday that stallion might be broken and be an incredible, like, fun, great player on my team. So for like guys like that, it was pretty easy for me to talk myself into them. For some other guys, like, I'll say, like, when DeAndre Ayton came, I didn't know a whole lot about him other than that Phoenix complained about him all the time.
They didn't like him, yeah.
Yeah, and I was like, I don't know anything about him. And the more I read about him, I was like, how is he ever going to be somebody that Phoenix loved when they were trying to fit him around, at the time, like Chris Paul and Kevin Durant and all these guys that were like, they were stars, and they were like, now you young guy, go play in a meaningful game for like in like playoff scenarios around these superstars that we know exactly what they are, and just be like water that flows between them. And I'm like, forget it. There's just no way that guy was ever going to win there. So like, I was very happy to accept him, see who he was, see if he could grow here. And, I wanted to like root for him without any of the, like, his past following him here.
I think that's healthy, albeit rare approach to fandom. Tara, I wonder for, as you see this team grow, who are you most excited to watch?
Oh gosh. Well, I mean, again, the young guys. Like I said, I always like watching the young guys play because I like to see what they're going to turn into. And the thing that to go back to your original question, one of the things that I'm hopeful about this year is that we're actually collecting data finally after all of these years of tanking. So like, I don't know which one because we haven't seen them do enough to know. I mean, obviously Shaden does something delightful every game, but whether or not that, reliable delightfulness is going to translate into wins, We don't know yet. But at least we're seeing like, oh, some of this could be regular. Some of this is starting to be a little bit more consistent. Some of the things we can't quite bank on yet, but like we're actually collecting data, be able to make those assumptions. So that having been said, like probably Shaden is, my number one right now, but that's mostly because like we just have the most data on him and I can see it going in a positive trajectory.
Right. He's played 140 games or whatever with the Blazers, and Scoots played, what he played 60 some last year, so 95-ish with the Blazers. So
yeah, one of the things that I try really hard to keep to separate in my head is whether or not the pure pleasingness of what Shaden looks like and his form and how gorgeously he plays, like separating that and going, okay, but is he contributing to winning?
Yeah, the aesthetics of his game are really pleasing. Like the jumper is so beautiful.
Pleasing.
Yeah, the jumper's so pretty, pleasing. And then it's like when he's shooting 29% from three, it doesn't fit. It feels like they should go in more because it looks so nice. But then it's like, oh, that was a brick, huh? I think it was 1 of 8 last night against Philly, but it was like, it still looks good.
Well, and his dunks like are gorgeous. Like nobody else is like keeping their legs parallel and pointing their toes and having their arms straight the same way, like as if they were being judged, in a gymnastics thing. But just like the number of dunks in a game doesn't mean you won the game. It's just like what we're holding on to right now to make these games enjoyable.
Yeah, it's he honestly he had a move last night where he beat Paul George baseline. He's on the left side of the key and he kind of like shook Paul George with the crossover. Such a nice move. Paul George left flat-footed, and Shaden kind of did like a soft dunk, like he kind of just put it up with 2 hands and it was like, "Yep, see ya," like business decision. And I was like, "Come on, man!" Like I sit right in front of the Blazers content team, right behind, the Blazers content team, and I'm like, they need you. They need you to dunk gigantic. Okay, bud? Like you're going to lose this game by 25. Like we need a crazy highlight because these people get paid off social media impressions. Not exactly, but to some extent.
Yeah, it's kind of hard in the situation we are right now, especially with the young guys, to figure out how they're contributing to winning. But I just wanted to briefly talk about Donovan Clingan, because something that we have talked about liking about him this year in his presence is his intensity. And the fact that he's got more of an intensity than we've seen in some of these other players over the last year. Coming off of 2 national champions, I've talked about it ad nauseum, but like he's a guy who's used to winning, and I was really worried about like what's it gonna do to him to come into the Blazers this year, knowing where they are headed. So he's somebody I'm keeping my eyes on. We aren't getting as much data on him because he's not able to play as many minutes, which is kind of a bummer because we had our hopes up. But yeah, he even just like the intensity that he brings. If he can maintain that, that's what I'm really watching is like, is he going to be able to maintain that?
Yeah, he is, I don't swear in the show, it's a family program, but he is a real dentist's father. Like he gets after it. He doesn't take any guff. I'll say that. He is not a guff taker. Does people say guff? Can you say guff on a podcast in 2025? I'm sorry. Okay, let's come back in the second segment. We'll talk more about guff, hopes, dreams, and fears for the Blazers, because Tara touched on something about data, and I'm just curious. What do we know? What do we know about this stinking team? Let's talk about that in the second segment. Join us on the other side. First, I want to tell you that today's show is brought to you by Rocket RX. If you're ready to boost your confidence and take control in the bedroom, Rocket RX has the solution. Imagine feeling more prepared and performing at your best. Rocket RX makes it simple and stress-free. Rocket RX offers FDA-approved treatments for erectile dysfunction at a lower cost than branded alternatives. No more uncomfortable doctor visits or pharmacy trips. Everything is delivered straight to your door in discreet, plain packaging. With Rocket RX, you'll get trusted care from a real U.S. clinical team. All you got to do is complete a quick 100% online consultation, and you could get a free prescription today. Visit rocketrx.com to get started now. It only takes 2 minutes. Right now, our listeners get 40% off your first order when you use the code LOCKEDONNBA. That's rocketrx.com, and the code is LOCKEDONNBA for 40% off your first order. Terms and conditions apply. Rocket RX, better sex made simple. All right. Still chatting here with Rose and Tara of the We Have a Take podcast, available wherever you get podcasts on all your audio platforms. They're smart enough to not have an active YouTube channel. In any case, I'm curious, Tara, you mentioned data. We're finally getting data. I think that's a great point, because last year, one of the most frustrating parts about the season was that the Blazers weren't very good, and you got to the end of the year, and it was like, we don't even know anything about this team. We don't know. DeAndre Ayton missed 30 games. Shaedon Sharpe missed 50 games. There was a lot of time when Malcolm Brogdon was the best player on the team, and it was like, he's not going to be here for very long. Why are we even worried about the success of Malcolm Brogdon? And none of like sort of the groups played together in any meaningful way. So I want to start here, and I'll throw it to you, Rose, first. It's like, what do you think we know? Like, is there, if you had to say like a certainty about this team, what do you feel like? And none is an answer. As I like to say to people on email, no is an answer. You can feel free to tell me no, but none is an answer. Do you think there are any certainties about this team?
Gosh, that's a good question. So I will say, in the complete opposite vein of Tara, like, I actually don't like basketball data. And it's because like my like regular day job is data oriented. And so I like take off my work hat and put on my fun hat, which is not to think about data. But if I do want to put on my work hat for a little bit, I will just say this. In the absence of big quantitative data, the thing that I typically look toward is qualitative data. What do I see? What kind of themes do I see that like poke out at me? Like, what am I looking for? What do I expect? And I'll say that one of the things that I think I do know is that we don't play our young players enough. This is something thing. I don't understand why is the thing. And I'll say, like, I know that our vets are good, and I know that there's a lot of things that young guys can learn from vets, but there are some things that you cannot learn just by watching.
Agreed.
And for me, what I have learned is that I want somebody who is interested in playing them more and letting them experiment and letting them try and letting them fail and learn from their mistakes. Instead of
Nate Bjorkgren teased you with it, right? He played one game, he played the young guys, and then the next game he was like 41 minutes of Jeremy Grant. Let's go.
Oh my God. And I was in the arena for the Jazz game with my daughter, who's the biggest Scoot fan in the world. And she was like very satisfied with her experience. But I also kind of felt like he played Scoot and those young guys because they were playing well and the vets were not.
Yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely. And I feel like that doesn't always happen with under Chauncey Billups. Sometimes it's like, hey, you had a good run, but like, this is where your road stops. It's at the 26-minute mark. Have a seat, young man. Like, thank you for your service. Now is the end of the game. And legally, if you can't rent a car, you cannot play. Like, you got to be 25 and up here. And it's hard to know, like, would have Chauncey done the exact same thing as Nate under the exact same situation, but it felt different. It undeniably felt different. And then Bjorkgren turned around and played Donovan Clingan like something like 11 and a half minutes in the game against Dallas. And I was like, that's right. Chauncey Billups still in the building, y'all. You can't get rid of him. The spirit is alive. Tara, what do you think? Is there a certainty we have? Do we have a certainty about this team? Is there something you feel like you know after watching this team?
Oh, not at all. I said that we're collecting data. I didn't say that I knew what it meant. I mean, like, I don't know if you guys have ever set up a website before, but you like set up website and you like hook up Google Analytics and then you wait for the data to roll in. And for like a week, you might get 8 hits. Like, what do you know off of that? But at least you know the hits are coming. So yeah, I have no idea what we know, but I just know that we've seen some guys playing together more than we have, and we've seen reps more than we have, and it's up to people with other podcasts like yours to tell us what all that means. But I'm excited that it's coming in so that you can now tell us what it means.
Yeah, I'm merely a person with opinions. I'm rarely correct, but I do have opinions about things. Maybe not rarely correct. I should be more confident in my own abilities. I am sometimes right about stuff, but I maintain an open mind because learning about the team is actually the interesting part, not being correct about it, because there's very little fun in being right all the time.
Yeah, well, I mean, can I turn it on to you and say, like,
please.
Is there something that you've seen that with this data that is coming in, limited as it is, that you have noticed? And maybe, I mean, I listen to you every day, but it's at like 5:00 in the morning. So by noon, I've forgotten what it is. But is there something that has stood out to you that like, oh, okay, that's something we starting to see actually?
Yeah, I don't feel much certainty. I think one of the most disappointing parts of this season, just from a viewership standpoint, is that it feels so similar to last year, in which that you got to the end and had this unsatisfying feeling. And I think this is to Rose's point. It's like, I understand that coaches are just going to play players that are like better, quote unquote. But I would just like to see a commitment to 22 minutes of Donovan Clingan, regardless, to find out what he can do. He looks like he can't play offense at all. Let's figure it out, right? Like if his feet just don't work in that way, he's a guy who can backpedal but not go forward. Let's find out about it. And I feel pretty certain that none of the veteran players are part of the next good version of the Blazers. But I don't feel certain that the people running the team feel that way. So that gives me like, I feel a little bit lost there. Like my personal feeling is that Anthony Simons is not going to be part of the team when they're good again. Right. But I don't know that Joe Cronin thinks that. I don't think Jeremy Grant is going to be part of the team when they're good again. But he's also under contract for several more seasons after this, 3. So like inaction would keep Jeremy Grant around and we wouldn't know. So I feel, and I think it's pretty obvious that DeAndre Ayton's not going to be part of what's next. They just drafted a center at 7, right? But he seems like he's going to be not a tradable part of the program. So maybe he's around for a while. So I feel that some of my certainties don't align with the way that the team is run. So I actually don't know anything. Like I am in the woods.
Well,
Welcome.
I'm glad you brought up DeAndre, because one of the things that I have seen, like I've liked to watch, is the interplay between DeAndre and Scoot and DeAndre and Shaden, and whether or not it ends up being DeAndre Ayton in the future. I think one of the things that they're looking at is how do they play with that type of a center and how can they best be maximized? Like, can they be maximized with that type of a center? And, so are we going to try to morph Donovan Clingan to do what DeAndre Ayton does? Or if Donovan Clingan does something completely different, are Shaden and Scoot going to be a good pair with him? So those are kind of some of and I don't know like what you measure, what analytics you look at to decide that, but we're actually getting minutes of that so we can go back and look.
Right. I guess I do think DeAndre Ayton is a better teammate than he gets credit for. Like I think fans say like, oh, this dude doesn't care and all this. He seems like a pretty good coworker. The things that he struggles with are maybe like he doesn't always do the things that would be best to be the best version of DeAndre Ayton. But in terms of being a good dude, I think he likes Scoot Henderson. I think he gets excited when Scoot's excited. I think he says all the right things about Donovan Clingan. Like I do think he's probably a better coworker than people view him as, except for like maybe he wasn't a very good coworker with Chris Paul or whatever, one of America's most challenging coworkers. Rose, you said you had a question for me in our pre-show meeting. I want to hear that question. Let's do it on the other side. Join us in the third segment because Rose is about to light me up. Join us on the other side. First, I want to tell you that today's show is brought to you by Rocket Money. It's the personal finance app that helps you find and cancel your unwanted subscriptions, monitors your spending, and helps lower your bills so you can grow your savings. It brings everything together in one place, whether it's your subscriptions, your spending habits, or even your goals you want to hit this year. Rocket Money has over 5 million users and has saved a total of $500 million in canceled subscriptions, saving members up to $740 a year when using all of the app's premium features. So you've probably heard people talk about Rocket Money, and it helps them track down their subscriptions that they forgot they were paying for. And that is a super useful service. When I used Rocket Money very quickly, pulled up all my digital subscriptions, and I got to see exactly what I was paying for. But you can also use it just to like manage your finances. Say you can set your goals for how much you want to spend on groceries this year, or this month, this quarter. Rocket Money will track that right in the app, and they'll even send you notifications. Hey, you're getting close, or hey, you spent less money than last month, so you can stay on track and grow your finances. It's the all-in-one tool that's going to make things more useful for you and help you save a little bit of money along the way. Cancel your unwanted subscriptions and reach those financial goals faster with Rocket Money. Go to rocketmoney.com/locked-on today. That's rocketmoney.com/locked-on. rocketmoney.com/locked-on. Still a pass versus point guard. Still Mike Richmond. Still chatting here with the hosts of the We Have a Take podcast, Tara and Rose. Rose, you mentioned before we hit record that you had a question for me, and I said, save it. Save it. So what do you got for me?
Yes, sir. So, okay, one of the things I noticed during the Mavs game was that when they showed Nate Bjorkgren as, the interim or a stand-in head coach for the game, in the little graphic, they said that he was with his second season with the Blazers. And
sort of,
as far as the fans go, he has been on the coaching roster for one season. And then later in the telecast, I believe it was Lamar, he made some comment about how Nate Bjorkgren was sort of consulting with the team last year. So one, is that a faux pas from the broadcast team? And two, given what we saw, what happened with Doc Rivers last year, is it common for coaches to sneak in the back door and become head coaches?
Okay, a couple things on this. He was a consultant last year, and I guess he was around the practice facility. In my current role, I don't go to the PF, so that's like bad media jargon. I apologize. I don't go to the practice facility. Those of us who are forced to talk about it a lot sometimes call the PF. I don't go to the practice facility. So he might have been there, right? So maybe people who are there more often could tell you that he was around in like I don't mean like a public way that he was doing interviews, but like, who is the bald man on the court, on the far court? Who is that? Right? Like it's that type of thing. So yeah, he was around. They said he was a consultant all of last year. I'm going to connect some dots here, and then when Nate Bjorkgren was fired by the Indiana Pacers, it was reported by Adrian Wojnarowski that the people that were most supportive of him within the Pacers organization were President Kevin Pritchard and GM Chad Buchanan, who worked for the Trailblazers in the past. In fact, they worked for in the past in 2006. They were the same roles, President and GM of the Portland Trailblazers, and they hired an intern to be part of the basketball front office. And that intern's name was Joe Croden. Nate Bjorkgren is connected to Joe through his people. I don't know that makes him. I think it would actually be straight up malpractice if they hired Nate Bjorkgren without running a real search for the next head coach. I would light them up on this podcast. They have to do a real job search, right? They have to treat this with the respect it deserves. But to answer your question about do guys come in the back door? Certainly seems like one of them did, and he's the associate head coach of the Portland Trailblazers.
I mean, that's how Doc Rivers got to the Bucks job. And so it does sound like it's not the level of Doc, right? But Nate Bjorkgren is a former head coach in the league. He's got experience, and he was, I think, like calling it like working in the shadows maybe is like is maybe incorrect, but yeah, like he was a behind the scenes, doing some coaching consulting. I wonder to what level. And then he was part of the changeover in coaching that included firing Chauncey Billups's brother. So like, who made the call, to put him on the bench. It was pretty clearly the front office said, we want our guys in there. And this is one of our guys. I will say, like, in terms of consultants you don't see behind the scenes, shadow people, the Blazers have hired, I've seen this guy around the gym, around the arena, John Townsend, who worked for the Blazers in the past as shooting coach. He's actually the guy that Jeremy Grant credits with like turning him into a shooter. Jeremy Grant has one of the great shooting development stories of any player ever. Jeremy Grant was a bricklayer, and now he's like a very good NBA shooter in his
10th NBA season, 11th NBA season, whatever it is. But John Townsend works for the Blazers now, and he's back doing a similar role as like a consultant shooting coach type of thing. So I don't think it's uncommon for the Blazers to have these roles in not public facing ways, the way they currently operate. So I don't think it's like nefarious. I don't want to paint it as that, but I think it's worth noting it's worth noting how the sausage gets made. I think that's a good one. Thank you for allowing me to get back in my solo podcast game and give you 5 minutes of Mike's soliloquy. I don't have a co-host.
It was a good answer.
I did 250 these a year. 250 these a year. I only got guests for like 225 or something like that, maybe 200. Okay. I want to ask you guys this: what worries you about this team, Tara? Like, when you? I know that's like probably everything, right? It's like every single thing. But give me like 2 things that when you watch this team, you are concerned about.
Why can't they get rebounds?
Yeah.
Why aren't they? Why aren't they better rebounds? Rebounds. I like dunks, and then right under dunks are athletic rebounds, and we have all these athletic guys. Why are they not just?
Well, they get offensive rebounds. They get offensive rebounds because they go.
I know they get offensive rebounds, but they also miss a lot of shots until they have a lot of opportunity.
That's true. They do. They give themselves multiple chances at it.
So I think it's great that they get offensive rebounds, but I don't understand why they don't get more defensive rebounds. So that's
some of it is just Jeremy Grant's allergic to it. I guess he has a long-standing allergy to defensive rebounding.
Yeah, and I guess the second thing is just going back to Donovan Clingan. Him not playing very much, but when I look at him, he's gassed and he is dripping sweat. And like when last night, in the Philadelphia game, when he came out, like I was like, is he well? I mean, because I was just wondering if like maybe he's caught whatever they had, just because like he hasn't been playing very much and he just looked tired. So I would also love to see him more, but I would also love to know that he's in a good place to be able to play those minutes.
What about you, Rose? What's your worries? Give me, if it's like 8 worries, give me 2 or 3 of them.
Okay, so I have one deep worry that I will share with you.
Okay.
And Tara, I don't even think I've told you this worry. So, so I think that there is a difference between getting something that is good and people thinking that they're getting something that is good. And so like right now we're in a place where the fans think that they're not getting something that is good and they're worried that they're not getting something that is good. But I've also tried to keep in the back of my mind that maybe there's something really wonderful happening behind the scenes, and so like we can't see it as fans. We don't feel like the product looks good as like consumers or whatever, but like maybe there's something great happening. But my deep, deep worry is that there's not. And that that I'm looking at a team and this is exactly all there is, and there's nothing cooking in the kitchen, nothing new is coming out. And I was like pontificating to my husband today, and I was like, the fans are all like, we should fire our coach, which we've been like, fans have been saying for I don't know how long. We should fire our coach. And I was like, and it's solution. I know, but it's clear that he's like, I don't think this franchise is going to re-sign this coach after this year.
No.
So my question is,
they brought him back for this year. Yeah.
So my question is, why wouldn't you fire him if maybe the people who buy your product would think it was better if you're moving on from this anyway, and give your friend a paid 6-month vacation before he figures out his next step? And like, isn't that a good solution for everybody? Like, I don't know. This is just something I've been thinking about, because if there's nothing going on behind the curtain, if there's no value in keeping him here through the end of the season, the fans might be happier. They might be more interested in watching your product, consuming or whatever, buying your tickets, and maybe you can help get them jazzed for like what the next step is going to be.
I don't think they will fire Chauncey midstream. I don't think they.
I don't think they will either.
Yeah, it doesn't seem like the way they do business. I don't know if it's curious. I don't even think it's that surprising that he's back. Like, they ran the whole freaking team back. they brought back 13 guys. Like they brought back 13 guys and a two-way guy. They were like, we like this thing. Let's just do it again. Like,
oh my God, Justin Minaya has been on this team forever.
Yeah, a long-standing two-way contributor, Justin Minaya. I guess he was a lot of 10 days the first time around, and then 2 years. But it's like 3 seasons with the program. I don't know. I don't know what to make. I would be stunned if Chauncey Billups coaches a game after April, right? Like whenever the season ends, April 10th or whatever, April 15th. Like if he coaches another game after that, I'd be stunned. But I'd also be equally surprised if they fired him. I think someone somewhere in the building values what he does, or maybe like it gets to a certain point where the money excuse doesn't make sense anymore. Oh, they don't want to pay 2 coaches. They don't have to. They can just pay Nate Bjorkgren to do it or whatever. They can pay any number of folks on the bench to do it, although it obviously would be Nate based on the dots we've connected recently. I don't know. I think that concern is the big dark cloud hanging over this, Rose. I think you really hit it. Is like, yeah, what if the other side of the hill looks like this side of the hill? I think that's the concern. And obviously we're a long way away. We haven't even hit the midway part. There's blah, blah, blah. But like, yeah, I think that is a reasonable concern that it's, the other side doesn't look much different, and you're the Sacramento Kings of much of the 21st century. It's that part is terrifying, right? You got to hope that it hits. So let's end on some positives here. Last year, in a very rare turn of events, I left my house for New Year's, and I went out with some friends and we got drinks. And it was a friend who I don't see very often, but I really like. And someone asked her, what is your New Year's resolution? And her response was, I'm not very resolute, which is actually the correct response. So I'm not necessarily saying to make a New Year's resolution, but if you were cooking up in the lab a thing to go right for the Blazers in 2025, what would that look like? Tara, let's start with you. What would the thing? It can be tiny, like they could grab a freaking defensive rebound, or big picture stuff. Like what is it that you want it to look like? Say when we reconvene for our annual New Year's Eve show next year.
That Donovan Clingan is thriving because he has unlocked something in his teammates that was heretofore asleep because they didn't necessarily come from competitive backgrounds like he did. And I'm talking specifically about Shaden and
I was like, you could just say his name. Call him out. Shaden Sharp, awaken the dormant competitor within you, brother. We need to see it.
Well, I think it's not just that like, oh, Shaden is so chill all the time. He doesn't look like he's competitive. It's that he came pretty late to basketball, went on a very quick trajectory, and then sat out his 1 year in college and didn't actually play for games that mattered. Right. He didn't play with that team.
Right.
And so he was not part of a group that was trying their hardest to make everybody in the building proud. He was in the building, but he wasn't on the court. And then you go to Scoot, who played for G League Ignite, and we don't need to even go in to there, but he was not playing.
I like this theory, Tara. This has legs. I'm keep going.
And then we go and they go and they draft Donovan Clingan, who's coming off of 2 national championships. And I am so terrified that he's coming from this absolute, like, who wins 2, right? It's so rare how hard they had to work to win 2. To come to a team that's led by whose the future is in the hands of 2 guys who, it's not that they haven't played hard. It's not that they don't have heart. It's just that they haven't been in a building with everybody yelling at them to win, to represent and play for something, And even if you go back to Anthony, even if Anthony was going to stay on the team,
IMG. Yeah.
it's not like I'm saying there's only one way and you have to go to college. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying, look at the way this team is constructed. They brought in a guy who's coming off of 2 national championships to play with 3 wonderful people who haven't had that same kind of recent competitive experience. And so next year when we get together, I'm going to be like, oh my God, Donovan Clingan did it. He helped them understand what this means to play for something, and they all bought in, and maybe they don't win all the time, but they know that they're on the same page when it comes to playing for something.
Okay, that was fantastic. I think there is a sort of the emotional growth factor. I've mentioned this a lot on the shows, that I don't think the Blazers appreciate the soft art of team building. And that is like the human element that goes into building a type of team, is that you need different personalities and all of those things. And I hadn't considered that a lot of their players just haven't played in that sort of competitive environment. I love it. I'm all in on that. I'm all in on this theory. I'm all in on it. There's some real legs to it. Rose, when you look out, what is the ingredient that changes things, or what do you want to see change in 2025 for this team?
I want to see the next leader emerge. I don't know who it is exactly,
Amen.
But like, they don't have one now. And there's like moments where I think that everybody thought Scoot was going to be the leader, just because we're used to the point guard being the leader.
And he had some charisma coming in, and that has waned with his struggles, I would say.
But he has not had the opportunity to be on the floor as much to be a leader. He has still had so much to learn to be a leader. We still had these kind of like vets that, I don't want to say in the way, but these vets were like, the natural course would be that the lead gets passed to one of them, but they are not leaders. Like, that's not really what they're doing, or they're not like that natural leader anyway.
Right.
I think that it could be Scoot. I think it could be Donovan, but Donovan still feels like really young and green to be the leader. I think that Denny is looking like he might emerge as a leader. He's like,
absolutely.
He's looking, and he has been that in the past. Like when he was in EuroLeague, like he was much more of the ball in your hands guy who initiated offense. And he got, when he was drafted to the Wizards, and the Wizards had Russell Westbrook on that team. They had Bradley Beal on that team. He had to learn to play a different way. But maybe, and I'll talk more about this when we do our Denny episode, but maybe this is going to be a more natural fit for him to emerge as a leader again, with the ball in his hands a little bit more, with a little bit more leadership responsibility. And oh, by the way, he's back wearing the natural number that he wanted to be wearing the entire time, but he wasn't allowed to wear in Washington.
I love it. Yeah, he has the juice. He has the intensity and also the on-court production to back up what it takes to be a leader. You either need years and just to be, enough gray and enough past to say, listen to me when I speak, or you need to be good enough and intense enough. And I think Denny has that. There's some other factors that go into it for sure that I think are harder for us to know. Do people listen to you in the locker room? I think that is another thing that is hard to know from our vantage point. But yeah, I like that. Those are both excellent answers. Excellent answers. This is thank you so much for joining the program and for closing with absolute bangers, rewarding people for listening this deep into the program, which I know they all are. I appreciate you. If folks are looking for more of your oeuvre, where can they find each of you talking into microphones?
Well, we did a whole episode saying goodbye to Twitter and figuring out where we were going to be. It appears that we've landed on Blue Sky. So you can find me on Blue Sky at TCB Biggs, and the We Have a Take podcast is at We Have a Take on Blue Sky as well.
Yeah, and you can find me on Blue Sky at Rose L. Harding. I also live on Instagram as Rose L. Harding, although I really don't post there much, but come say hi.
And the podcast available on all audio platforms. The We Have a Take podcast. It's fun. Go listen to it. It's a good conversation. What I really enjoy about it is it's two people that don't always agree, but they don't argue. So there is a special magic to it of two people that maybe don't agree with one another, but are not arguing about it. It is a beautiful tribute to civil disagreement. Dear listeners,
we got to get that as a poll quote.
Yeah, you can clip that. You can clip that from YouTube. I'll send you the audio clean if you want. In any case, dear listeners, come back and join me for you're listening to Wednesday, January 1st show. That's weird. Come back and join me for Thursday's program. It's 5 days a week. It's wherever you get podcasts. It's also on YouTube. If you made it this far, you're like 50 minutes into a midweek Blazers podcast about a kind of a bad basketball team. And I didn't need to say kinda. So tell a friend. That's what you should do. Tell a friend. The liking, the subscribing, the thumbs upping, all that stuff helps. But I think the best way to share a podcast is word of mouth. If you are a Blazer fan and you have Blazer fans in your life, they're going to trust you with a recommendation. So do me a favor, go tell a friend about the show and then come back for tomorrow's program. I appreciate you listening. I'll talk to you soon.